Welcome back to Embodied Spirit Uncensored. I'm Nicole D'Alessandro, here to take you deeper into the polarised lens through which I once viewed the world, shaped by the pivotal figures in my life, my Nonna, my Gran, and my mum. Today we'll explore the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just a heads up, it's not what it seems. But before we dive into that, let's backtrack a little bit back to our first episode, where I touched on a seance that marked a significant moment in my life. A friend recently asked me to elaborate on what a seance is, and I knew I was contacting and how I knew I was contacting a family of Indigenous elders. And given the intricacies of this experience, the spiritual lingo involved, I think it's important that we clarify some of the terms. In our case, we created our own makeshift seance, which involved a Ouija board. And a seance is a ritualistic practice where a group of people attempt, and sometimes succeed, which in our case we did, in contacting the dead. The word seance comes from the French word for session or sitting, and it's often used in the context of mediumistic practices. Making our own Ouija board meant that we wrote letters and numbers on notepaper, cut them up and arranged them around an oval table, and somehow we fucking knew how to get a glass. We created a smoke haze inside it. Yes, we had cigarettes. And we placed it upside down at the centre of the table. Everyone's fingers rested on it. We set a little bit of an intention that we wanted to call in some dead people, and voila. Now, how did I knew it was a group of Indigenous elders? That's where my gift of knowing comes into play. And at that time, it wasn't a gift at all. In fact, for a long time, it was a curse. And the gift of knowing, or clear knowing, is also related to claircognizance, and it's a form of psychic ability where one has spontaneous knowledge or intuitive understanding without any logic basis. This insight can come as a sudden download, which for me, that's what it looks like. It's just a download of information that feels right, and it's often without any direct sensory input. That's where the batshit crazy comes into play too. And over my life, I have been known as an extroverted, impulsive person who marches to the beat of my own drum. That's the rebel with a cause. And for people who are skeptic or don't have that gift, they have other gifts of clairs, and we'll get into that in another episode. It does look quite impulsive when I make decisions. However, when I have that drop in or that intuitive boom, it's hard to describe, but I know that I have to act on it. And in this case, I knew that it was a group of Indigenous Aboriginal elders, and we confirmed that with some questions. What happened? Well, I'm not going to get into that either because I really want to talk to these three women in my life that were really important to me. But let me get to framing that around my 14-year-old self. Looking back, there were clues. I always wanted to be a mother. I always wanted to help people. And the fuckery of my life and the women in it made it so confusing because I didn't have great role models at that time because I was polarised. I was living in the world of shoulds and should nots, good, bad and ugly, and I only saw the fuckery of these women. My grandmother was a stoic matriarch. I didn't see that. I saw a cold, mean woman. She grew up in an orphanage. She was a Scottish English woman, and she'd had her own fair share of challenge. My Nonna immigrated from Italy with my father and his sister, and my Nonna, who fought in World War II on the front line. They'd experienced the loss of 3 babies. They'd had them buried in Italy where they didn't know where they were. They had experienced the recession. They had experienced great poverty and also racism. My mother had 4 brothers. She shared a room with them. She was bullied at school. She'd had her own experience of mess. So the 3 of them put together had enough trauma to create the most amazing resilience and the most amazing role modelling. But at the time, I didn't see it. I just saw fuckery. So at 14, there were clues all along. I, at the age of 8, were making mud pies for the local community and I sold them. Yep, I sold shit pies to people. At the age of 10, I was having a Cabbage Patch birthday party. Yes, I still played with dolls at 10. And I had a community of friends come over and all buy my doll presents. And at the age of 11, I was marrying Davy Jones from the Monkees and having his babies. So these little signs of me wanting to hold womb energy and to be a mother and a wife were there. At 14, my mother wasn't in a good place, and my gift of knowing knew that I had to do something. So I had a connection with the school health nurse. At that time, we didn't have psychologists at the school. And I shared my immense worries for my mum, and my worries came out in anger. So we intervened and we went to a drug and alcohol clinic, and Holyoke was the place. It didn't land well at all. And in that moment, there was another low blow. My family saw me as the problem, and I got sent away. And all of these are blessings, by the way. In that really challenging, pivotal moment, I knew I had to get out of school. So I got sent to Narrogin with my cousin. In actual fact, it was my mum's cousin. I learned how to drive a car. We made crafts. I had a really good time. I was there for 3 weeks. It gave me time to breathe. It gave my mum and me time away from each other. And my mum, bless her, she is not ugly at all. She has the most beautiful piercing blue eyes. She created such amazing birthday parties for us, the celebrations around festive seasons. She introduced us to amazing music. So, Mum, if you listen, Dad, anybody, Gran in heaven and Nonna in heaven, I speak to them a lot now that they're dead, probably more so than they were alive. I'm much more closer to my Gran now than I ever was. I want you to know this is not a shit fest. This is not a blame game judgment. This is a conversation around a 14-year-old lens that I no longer have. I see all of the blessings, the equanimity in my experience of them as women in my life. So at 14, I knew I had to do something. I was at a crossroads. These women in my life had left me feeling really confused. I was not supported in this knowing that I wanted to get help and had to get help for my family. I somehow knew that my mum had these struggles, and it didn't land well, so I got sent away. When I came back, it was in the 1989, and I knew I had to leave school, and I was standing, and this was my first real experience of true love and honouring that part of me that wanted to become the mother. So I was standing up on top of the school balcony with 2 of my girlfriends. And because in that moment I was still very dual in my expression, I saw my family as messy. In fact, I didn't want to even admit that I was Australian, Scottish, English. I only said that I was Italian. So I disowned the part of my life that I saw as the bad and ugly, and I brought in my Nonna's love. She used to squeeze my cheeks and give me the best cuddles, and it was really beautiful, the relationship that I had with her. So I saw her as all good and my Nonna and my mum as all bad. So standing up in this place of school, year 10, we were 15 by then, still messy. I had a black AC/DC jumper on, Fabergé jeans. If you know the 80s, they are the jeans that you have to lay on the bed and like peel on. Anyway, so I'm standing up there. I look down and I see the most beautiful man, Italian of course, long sweeping hair. He had a Jag shirt on, tucked in. He was clean and tidy. And I just looked down and he caught my eye. It was like a magnetic pull. And because I had the gift of knowing, and I was so enthralled by becoming worthy enough to be a mother and a wife, and I was fucking determined I wasn't going to fuckerize it. I think I just made that word up. Like my mum and dad, I saw this clean, tidy gentleman, shy, with a big nose. And I said to the girls, I'm going to marry him. And they just looked at me like I was an absolute lunatic. Now, that wasn't actually out of character, was it for me? People that knew me knew that, I was already making big, messy decisions and I was already a rebel. I was already known in the school And I had black lips, bloody black eyes, an AC/DC top and Fabergé jeans. Hello. It just so happened that the person that I was standing with was that guy, my soon-to-be, years down the track husband. It was his sister that I said that to. And they looked at me and went, "Get fucked." Not the guy with the big nose and the glasses. And I went, "Yeah." And she says, "That's my brother." And I saw an opportunity, didn't I? So I went from this seeing one person in my family as all good, my Nonna, this beautiful, loving, womb-like, gave me everything. We used to cook pancakes on Sunday. And the two other women in my life who were very powerful and strong, but I'd separated. I disregarded that whole part of my life, and I made everything from then on about being the good enough wife, the good enough mother for this person that I was to marry. And so a new journey began. I decided that those three women had taught me what not to do as women. So I separated more. I disembodied and disconnected. And because I'd been sent away, I was fucking angrier than ever. And so the last 6 months of year 10, 1989, the good old 80s, were dedicated and fixated on a new obsession, becoming the good enough wife, the good enough girlfriend, cleaning myself up, grooming myself so that I could have this false pretense of not being messy, ugly, bad, or somewhat good, like the three women that had walked before me. So I then schemed with these beautiful girls, and Sandy, my closest friend, is the one that I have grown up with since the dawn of time. My mum and her mum had us. We grew up on the same street. We're soulmates, and she's still very much in my life now. Her and Nadia, my sister-in-law, they got his timetable. They started threading Nikki, because I was Nikki Lepre in those days. They started talking about me, threading little things. And so we set the scene. We set a new scene. So the good, the bad, and the ugly women in my life, I took as an expression of that is not what I'm going to be. And I made a beeline for finding a perception of what was tidy and clean. And so this whole other journey began around embodiment. And all of these expressions are very important parts of the embodiment journey. And I guess my question for you is who in your life, in your earlier life, did you see as good, bad, or ugly? Were there anyone that you perceived as all good? Was there anyone that you perceived as all bad or ugly? And what were the lessons and the learnings, if you were to go back? What were the blessings in that? Because now I can see that those expressions of those women were so fundamental to my journey and my resilience and my ability to be my own matriarch in our own family. So the story began, a new story, a love story. I met the love of my life and I hadn't even met him yet. So the next 6 months, I would spend disregarding, disowning this other very important section of my life, and I became everything I needed to be for this clean, tidy jag man. And so our year 10 ball, our graduation, because I knew that I was not going to be coming back to school or I would be in even deeper trouble. He'd just gotten his license. We had scammed him to take us to our year 10 graduation. And because he was a good boy, he had never had any experience of parties or drugs. I mean, he drank some alcohol. He was a bit of a boy's boy, a cricketer. And we got him stoned that night. And from that day on, for the next 34 years, I would make it my mission and I would become addicted to a story of worth and wanting to be good enough, a good enough wife, a good enough mother for the love of my life. And so in the next episode, we will continue the story of how polarization can look through a whole new lens, and this journey of embodiment through disembodiment and how that looks from a different perspective. And I just want to make it really clear again that my journey, my people, the women in my life, and the people I'm going to be talking about in the next few episodes were all hugely important. And I am so deeply grateful for each and every one of them. And I know without a doubt that everybody that has come into my life in some way, shape or form has come in with love. And it may not have seemed like that at the times that I was going through my experiences with them, and they will have a very different view. So if you are a listener and there are any triggers or there are any things that come up for you with your women, with the men in your life, with the people in your life, please make sure you reach out to someone that you trust or get in touch with a therapist or a support system. And do remember that this is a conversation around my journey so far of feeling disembodied, disconnected, and transitioning into the embodiment process so that I could help nurture and share and love and support the embodiment journey of other people. So for now, with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and some context into the background of my Nonna being the beacon of goodness, my Gran, a tougher character who taught me hard lessons, and my mum, seen through the eyes of a conflicted, angry 14-year-old, each playing a crucial role in shaping my worldview and my spiritual journey. And I hope you enjoyed the unraveling of these relationships and just touching on the outskirts of them, not going into too much depth. I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the exciting stuff around the sciences and the spirit, and having some great people on to have conversations around how that might look through different lenses. But for now, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Embodied Spirit Uncensored. And as we peel back these layers together, remember that understanding our past and the figures who shaped us, warts and all, is crucial in our journey of embodiment and spiritual growth. And don't forget, please, to follow or subscribe to our podcast for more deep dives into the intertwining realms of science, spirit, and self-discovery. You can catch up with me on Instagram at Nicole D'Alessandro Perth, or visit my website at www.nicoledalessandro.com.au. Until next time, keep embracing your journey, exploring your potential, and living your truth. I'll see you in episode 3.